Okay, our final speaker of the session is Eric Nooker from the University of Minnesota, and the title of his presentation is Uptake of PAH Compounds by Specialty Crops Grown in Biochar-Amended Soils.
Well, Kurt mentioned I'll be talking about PAH compound grown with specialty crops using biochar. So first off, I'll introduce specialty crops and biochar to you guys. Specialty crops are horticultural crops that have added value, fruit, vegetable, tree nuts, and earthly crops, and they amount to about half the value of crop production in the U.S. But there's a concern that if you grow specialty crops using biochar, especially if they're being consumed, we're not sure about PAHs that are sorbed on the biochar that could be uptaken into the crops. PAHs are polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. They're composed solely of carbon and hydrogen atoms and have two or more fused carbon rings. And the simplest one is naphthalene, and you can see that on the slide. If you add more and more rings, they can get more and more complicated and compose a large group of 200 plus compounds. PAHs are among the most common organic compounds that are potent, and they are easily transported in the atmosphere and have a universal presence not only in the atmosphere but in the soils and just in the environment in general. The U.S. EPA has a priority pollution list, and 32 of these PAH compounds are on there. So PAH is formed through incomplete combustion, which is like the burning of fossil fuels, coal, diesel, gasoline, a lot of things we depend on for transportation. And also they're formed through the burning of biomass, wood, tobacco, fire, and I have a picture of a cigarette on the side there. And it has also been confirmed during the production of charcoal during pyrolysis, and is also present in bio-oil from biomass pyrolysis. So the PAHs also occur naturally. I mentioned earlier with fossil fuels, crude oil, shade oil, coal tar, and they're also present in gases and ashes from forest fires, grassland fires, and volcanoes. So how PAHs also can be formed biologically through microbial degradation of black carbon and through microbial production during complex organic matter formation. But the primary source of PAH is anthropogenic. People generate them. The largest stationary point source emissions come from paper mills, consumer wood product factories, and petroleum refining. So here's a slide showing different PAH levels in different materials. You can see in soils they range from 0.4 to up to 45 micrograms per gram in terrestrial rocks. In pine needles, it's 0.4 to 1.9. And then you see more presence in sewage sludge and compost, 2.2 down to about 20, and sewage sludge is 2.2 up to 120, 26. And this is a slide showing PAH level sorbed to black carbon. See, it ranges, but basically you see it from 0.01 to 45 micrograms per gram. And I want to note that all these different biomass, the different pyrolysis techniques, the different variables that can influence the PAH range that are found on the biochar. This is showing that in more detail with different pyrolysis techniques, with the traditional kilns, slow pyrolysis, fast pyrolysis, microbial assisted pyrolysis. hydrothermal pyrolysis, and a few we didn't know, we weren't sure. So again, with the range, and you notice that the microwave, the fast pyrolysis and the slow pyrolysis, they have a high bar, but there's no statistical significance with that. And the one universal thing was that naphthalene was found on all the different biochars. So back to my research, I did a field trial and also greenhouse trial. In the field, I had one biochar, and in the greenhouse, I had multiple biochars and multiple soils from the Midwest with different properties. This is the PAH extraction from the plant. So we used acetonitrile to extract the PAHs from the plant. And then we ran the samples through a gas chromatographic mass spectrometer. So for my field results, you see my potatoes and lettuce. I think it was like 1% biochar added to this field plot. And this is with the lettuce. On the top, you can see that in the control, there were no PAHs found in the lettuce leaves. But with the biochar-amended plot, we did see some presence of PAHs. But I want to note that that could be from rain splash. And with potatoes, we didn't see any PAHs, either the control or with the biochar. So with the greenhouse, you see I have 5 different soils, and we also use potting mix, several different biochars, different rates, and different crops, above and below ground. This is like a typical greenhouse bench. This is just one snapshot of the various results that we saw, but this is radishes grown in moist soil. And you can see in the control, we did see a couple of PAHs at low levels. And in the biochar-amended treatment, we did see more PAHs and a greater presence in PAHs. So specialty crop grown in biochar-amended soil can bioaccumulate PAH compounds. And the level of the variable based on soil and type of biochar. My research is part of a larger project that we're doing. So this is not directly related to PAH, but I wanted to share this with you. Top picture, you can see control and biochar treatment. And this is the first, so we planted them, first time we planted them. And what we noticed is that what we did is that after 40 days, we would pull it out and then replant it. We did the succession trial, and by the 5th or 6th trial, we noticed that the suppression effect of the biochar was lost, and we actually saw, you can see in the picture that the plant with the biochar actually did better than the control. And the graphs show the same thing, where you can see both the ground and unground biochar. In figure A, we saw suppression in height and compared to the regular potting mix, but then B is like the third succession, and you see that with the unground biochar, some of the suppressant effect was lost, and in the final C, which would be like the 5th or 6th round, it was completely lost. And with the ground biochar, we would expect to see that to move up too, but how long that would take, I'm not sure. So I saw a spectrum of responses with increases in decreases and no changes with PAH uptake. Increases were mainly due to the PAH levels being sorbed onto the biochar. So when you add it to the soil, it'll be there for the plant to uptake. Some of the decreases we saw, we attributed to the soil organic content of the soil. If there's organic matter in the soil, that would absorb the PAH from the biochar, and so then there'll be less uptake in the plant. And like as we saw in potato plot in Rosemount, there were no changes, no differences. So pH concentrations are influenced by feedstock moisture level. And if you try to keep that, if you keep that lower, then that reduces the amount of pH that's found in the biochar. Also, reducing oxygen, and this was mentioned earlier this morning, where if you reduce oxygen, it's better. And same thing with pH. If you reduce the oxygen during pyrolysis and post-cooling, even storage, biochar usually have less PAH absorbed. Soil organic content also can influence PAH, and also the rate that the biochar is applied at. So something that we're not doing, more research should be done on is the pH content of each biochar, because every biochar is different, and also human health impact, especially with crops that are grown for human consumption. pH is carcinogenic, other concerns. People are So plant pH uptake depends on the crop, the pH content of the biochar, the pH content of the original soil, and the native soil organic content. PAH absorbed on biochar may elevate specialty crop pH levels, especially at higher biochar application rate, and we saw more of that happen in the greenhouse than in the field. I'd like to acknowledge Minnesota Department of Agriculture, my advisor Kurt Bokas, our lab technician Martin Ducer, and our student help. Do you guys have any questions?
Do we have time for a couple questions?
Did you mention fructose?
I didn't like, I noted observation, but I didn't like to take a ruler and measure him. And that was all across the board too, like, you know, with the succession plantings and, yeah, we saw like, it would, also with root nodulation I was talking about earlier, like there were different, I know it's different, like some treatments had more nodulation than others, but off the top of my head I can't give you any specifics.
I wouldn't be surprised if with lettuce, with the increase in roots, that is why we're uptaking more PAH. Biochar increases root growth.
Yeah, I want to say in general we saw less root growth with the biochar-amended treatment than the regular soil or potting mix. Any other questions?
Do you see the FCPA rules for the bioaccumulation of PAH in liquid? Is there any rules by bioaccumulating PAH?
Not sure.
And that's, it wasn't part of the overall study looking at human health impacts. And the difficulty comes in, there's a lot of different categories for EPA limits. If you looked at the results that we have for the straight PAH content, there are some that do exceed EPA guidelines. There right now is no formal definition for food consumption for total PAH content. It's basically the amendments that are added to soils or what's regulated. Is there any other questions for Eric? Let's thank Eric again.